Welcome to the Nourishment Mindset Podcast, your guide to good food, good health, and a good life. And now, here's your host, Nutrition Network advisor and author of The Nourishment Mindset, Dixie Huey.
Happy Transformation Tuesday, y'all. Welcome to or back to the Nourishment Mindset Podcast, where we are on a metabolic mission to achieve vitality and reverse chronic lifestyle diseases using three things: real whole foods, straight talk, and the pleasures of the table. Today, I'm very excited. Y'all can see, if you're watching it on YouTube, that I have a guest. This person knows more about food than anyone I have ever met. And that's saying a lot because I worked with a lot of foodies back in my culinary wine days, some food snobs, some wine snobs, and everyone thought they knew everything about food. This dude actually knows pretty much everything about food and is humble about it. And I learned so much from him when we worked together on a cheese and wine program. So welcome, Raymond Hook, cheesemonger extraordinaire.
Thank you, Dixie. I'm so happy to be here. And it's a very generous introduction. I know a lot about some things, and I know absolutely nothing about most things.
The more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything. It's true.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Yep, that's the expert, right? So you start learning about wine, and then you learn that Italy has 700 native grape varieties, and you just say, you know what? I'm never going to know anything about wine, but keep trying.
It's wet, and I like to drink it.
Exactly. We both share that. So, you and I, my audience doesn't know this. My subscribers will get it in their inbox first, but we met 20 years ago putting together a cheese and wine program.
Wow.
I don't know where the time was, but I have such fond memories of traveling with you to dairies. And I remember being out at Sweetgrass Dairy, y'all. What a place in Thomasville, Georgia. And the goats coming up to me like dogs to be pet. And it was like this whole other world. So we're going
And
to
the beautiful cows and the pastures. They have such a incredible farm.
They do. And what
Amazing.
wonderful people too. So
They're very amazing.
let's please take us back. So, for a foodie expert and cheesemonger, I'm wondering, was there a moment in your life where you tasted something and you went, I love food? You know, was there an aha moment or did it build over time?
I had been working. I was been in the cheese business for 40 years, and probably about maybe 5 years before I met you, I had started working for a specialty distributor, and I had a incredible working knowledge of cheese. But they would get super special cheeses, and I tried the Serra da Estrela from Portugal, and it's a super creamy sheep smoked cheese. It's rennet is hand harvested thistle, and they dip a bag into it, and the cheese is creamy, and it's like at room temperature. It's like fondue, and just the taste of the cheese and the it was like so special. It stays with you. And I kind of jokingly said, but I said it out loud to myself, wow, I really want to go here. And I want to meet the people who make this cheese. And I mean, I had been to some dairies and I was more kind of like uh, trying to find out actually like how does a dairy work? What do they, how do you make cheese from milk? But so I set it in motion that I wanted to go see this dairy. And I got a chance to go to England on a cheese tour, and I was like, I'm not that far from Portugal. So I went, and I have a Portuguese cheese friend, and he took me to the exact dairy and I got to meet them and eat the cheese at their table and meet the people who made it. And I was just enamored with the whole situation. Um, and and I still sell that cheese to this
Of
day.
course.
It was like a magical moment for me. And people ask me about the cheese and I just tell them it's, the most prideful cheese that Portuguese have. Everyone there loves it. It's great when you talk to people who live there and then you say something about Serra de Estrella and they're like, oh, and every one of them loves it. And our mutual wine friend, when I brought some, and we had young and old, and it was like versions, and everyone just, you stop when you get this cheese. Like it is the focus. And, it's still magical. It's amazing cheese. So
Love it.
there,
You went on a cheese pilgrimage and
I
made
did. I
magic.
stayed they have a cheese hotel on the property. It's like 7 rooms and, but you wake up in the morning smelling cheese curds from the dairy down the hill. And, for breakfast, you get house-made bread and fresh sheep milk ricotta and
Mm.
local honey. And it's like, oh, that's a magical way to start the day.
Right. Well, and what you said about, it commands your attention. You have to stop. Like when I talk to the audience or even my clients about the pleasures of the table, that's something I learned from people like you and in the wine industry. You need to sit down and appreciate the food and the company, if there is company, or just yourself, if you're solo, and really honor that dining experience versus our culture's rush, 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 slam it back and move on.
Well, I mean, even one step further is to intentionally make it even by yourself, like you go out and you eat with people, your friends, family, and there's like you enjoy that time with them. But don't penalize yourself if you're going by yourself or you're in a group of people, I mean, be very mindful and like reflect on the food and make good choices and just to eat great food and really contemplate or think about how it's good for you to eat good. It's an act of self-care.
Exactly. Exactly. So how does one go from, realizing that you have this palate and you love the taste and you paying attention to it to being a cheesemonger? Probably a lot of people don't know a cheesemonger. I say support your local cheesemonger, but how do you become that?
Um, it's my path was like kind of forced upon me. My family bought a restaurant and it had a cheese counter in it. And we took the cheese out, put other products in, but enough people ask about cheese. So, trying to be a good businessman, I started selling cheese. But, you know, if you're going to sell something, you need to know about it. And so I started, I mean, kind of self-educating. And then I would go to the American Cheese Society conference and got to meet cheesemakers. And I started going and actively going to like cheese shops and trying to meet good people. But really, um, it fascinated me because I also became a vegetarian. And so cheese is very much a way for me to get protein. And it can also be, a very good component in my diet. Um, and, and the more I tasted, it's really about tasting. Um, because the more things you taste, the better able you are to describe your taste or what you're looking for or your dislikes. And so I just sought out and people think that at my stage where I am that I only eat good cheese. I gotta say, I wish that was the point, but I had tasted a lot of cheese and a lot of product, and I tasted, uh, trying to figure out if it is a match for my shop, and it's not always. So, for every one great cheese, I think I'm probably down to like six less than great cheeses.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that they're bad, because I really go out of my way not to eat bad cheese, but they're not great. So it just takes time. And I also like know the people I buy cheese from, and I go to where they make it. In my early days, I don't want to say I was hoodwinked or bamboozled, but I've believed everything that producers told me.
Ah,
And I was like gullible and then you open up something, you read it, and some cheesemaker got their facility shut down by the health department because it was unclean or it had mold, and it's like, hmm, I probably need to go see these places and
right.
meet these people. Because, when you meet people and you talk to them and cheesemakers look you in the eye, you get to know who they are and you get to know what they will do to make, the best cheeses. So I learned a lot by my travels, and, I'm very fortunate that I got to travel a lot in Europe and America. I have been to at least 100 dairies in the US. Yeah, I don't have anything else to do. So,
Well, you're a cheesemonger. That's what they do. I remember being with you at an American Cheese Society meeting and doing a cheese tasting. It was like a room filled, and there's a whole, just like wine, I was so used to the swirling in the mouth and then the spitting and there, but cheese tasting has a similar thing. You taught me so much. So thank you.
the Salon of Cheese or the Cheese
Salon of
Festival,
cheese. Yes.
it is overwhelming to a lot of people. They think, oh,
Yes.
this is like heaven. But, six tables in and you're already got a half a pound of cheese stuffed in you. You're like, ugh. And you're not, there's 100 more to go. And at least 25 of those are incredible cheesemakers that you're going to eat their cheese.
Yep.
So, yeah, you have to be selective and you have to be prepared to, be in the game.
Yep. Stamina, stamina. So I want to fess up to you. I don't remember if I told you this 20 years ago. That trip from the Atlanta Hartfield out to Thomasville, Georgia was 4+ hours. We talked about lots of stuff, but I do want to let my subscribers and listeners know that I haven't always had an appreciation for cheese. I mean, here it is. If you're looking at YouTube, or if you've seen my book, the cover has this amazing blue on it and another cheese. But for years, I avoided cheese because of its fat content. Back when I was raised, we were all told to fear fat, and I was brainwashed basically thinking dietary fat, which if it's the good kind of nutrient rich fat, can be the best thing for you. But I avoided it like the plague. I was also never satisfied. And I had a severe eating disorder, which I've been very open about. But what really helped me get past that and develop vitality is embracing real whole foods, including fat, natural dietary fat. And that's one of my things with the nourishment mindset is eating real whole foods. So one story is that in college, by junior year, I studied abroad in France, and I was at this family friend's home, and they brought out this simple, beautiful cheese tray. Now I would love it, but my eyes got really big and I got really scared, and I didn't want to eat any of it. And my college roommate was with me at the time because it was her family friend where we were staying. And she whispered to me, "You're going to try each one of those. You're going to eat all of them. You're just going to do it." I
Yeah.
was so scared.
Very good friend, though.
Eddie, very good friend. She knew that would be highly offensive. By the time I met you, I was this sort of developing wannabe foodie, and I'm learning, and we had this, the trip that I mentioned that was super memorable. But how do you see this? Do you see cheese phobics? I'll call myself cheese phobic, cheese hesitant. How do you help someone ease into the world, because it is a nutrient rich food?
Well, I mean, yes, to all of that. There is a hesitancy. And it often happens that there will be a group of 4 or 5 people come in, and then the 3 or 4 of them will be tasting, adventurous, trying to, and one person will just be like, no, no. And, there are people who can't digest, and that's fine. And but I also like, there are, I just always believe, and I'm not always right, but a lot of times, strangely, that they just haven't had great cheese. And like, you give them like a little slice of Comte, or a little
Gateway
side.
cheese, Comte.
Yeah, it is a gateway cheese. It's and But you tell people about the tradition and the terroir and the mindset of the cheesemakers, and that it's truly minimally processed. I mean, cheese started out as just being a way to store protein. Um, and people figured out how to make it taste good. I mean, but they think about the, dairy fat, and they think that, oh, it has too much salt in it, and doctors will say that you shouldn't have fatty, salty things, but it's really not a lot of salt. And also, you know, other than like when you're at like cheese conferences and stuff, you don't really eat a lot of cheese because it's very satiating. And
Yeah.
an ounce and a half, 2 ounces, that's like plenty. I mean, it's different if you're having cheese nachos or a quesadilla. I mean, those might not be the best vehicle, even though I enjoy both of them. But, like the blue cheese behind you, nobody's going to eat 3 ounces of that cheese. I mean, you might say you will, but I
Depends on how
just,
much wine I have.
good point, over how much time. But I just think that it has been lumped in as like, foods that are like all of them are bad for you.
Right.
Yeah, Velveeta and American, sandwich cheese, not so good for you.
No additives.
But, they truly artisan, small produced, and, historically correct. Like, Comte's been made for thousands of years in the same area. Roquefort has to come from one region, the Manchego from one small area. And it's like how they make it, and how do they, make it constantly. So finding like the great cheese and letting I've, people who said that they don't like cheese, or I have a lot of, and they buy small amounts, and that's fine. I'm just happy that they're on their, journey, and that I was able to help them find good cheese.
Exactly. And when I think about it, there's so many parallels. When I was working as a sommelier on the floor of a restaurant, I'd get people in who, would say, well, I don't know anything about wine. And it was so fun to, I'm not pushing wine on someone. If they want water or beer or lemonade or whatever they want, it's fine. But if they have that, if the door is inched open, then I'm going to help them walk through. Do you like, you know, fruity flavors, just kind of walk them through what does this smell good to you? It's kind of a bit of a fact-finding mission. And of course, there's a budget. So I'm curious, do you have a similar path that you help people walk
We
through
have
the shop?
almost in the exact same path as Somalis do with, I mean, we ask them, do you like strong or mild cheeses, soft or hard cheeses? Do you like salty or a little bit more mild cheeses? And then, if we're selling to them, like, how many people? Do you know what else you're going to be eating, or do you know what you're going to be drinking? We really try to tailor and help them find the exact cheese. And then, we can talk about budget. I'm not going to deny or act like I don't have some very expensive cheeses. They're high value cheeses. I mean, that's just what it takes to make them. But also, there are great cheeses that you can get for $7 or $8 for enough for three people. I mean, that are truly artisan from people you want to spend your money buying products from, for supporting a business that you want to see be successful. So we help people find that next, cheese. We always say we want to help people find their next favorite cheese.
I love it. You're a cheese concierge.
More like a cheese goof, but I'll go with that.
Okay, so one thing I just want to quickly circle back to is early in our conversation, you were talking about your aha cheese, and you mentioned the word rennet. So for someone who is not who hasn't been to the Raymond Hook Capella Cheese School, can you tell us just what rennet is?
Rennet is there are several kinds. It is what separates the solids in milk from the liquid in it. Traditionally, it comes from one of the stomachs of a cow, but they also have microbial, which comes from like mushrooms. And then they have the vegetal one, like the thistle rennet, that the Portuguese use. And now people have a misconception about the cow. They think that every time somebody makes cheese, there's a baby cow that is contributing enzyme from it. It's all manufactured in a lab so
Mm,
that it's constant and consistent. Cheesemakers keep it frozen. It comes in like it almost is the same texture as like instant coffee. Um, and no one makes it. I shouldn't say no one because I'm sure there are some cheesemakers somewhere that I don't know about, but who, make it with the third stomach of a baby cow. Um, Commercial cheesemakers are trying to make products that are palatable and consistent, and they're adding other cultures in with the milk to the rennet, and they're trying to get the cultures to balance and create flavor profiles in consideration of what the rennet is doing. And you can use too much rennet and your cheese will taste almost bleach like. You
mm.
don't put enough rennet in it and you don't get the separation that you need. And then your cultures don't work. So I always say that people don't understand that cheesemakers are really like scientists.
Yes.
They need to test all of the milk for the acid, the pH, the milk fats, the solids. And, that's why some cheesemakers, even though they have access to pasture raised milk, like to get milk that is from confinement dairies where animals live in barns and are fed a steady diet of stored food versus ones whose cows are in pastures, and today they might be eating grass and wildflowers and tomorrow it may be herbs. And so they have to know their milk, and um, they have to be like really good at it. But rennet is what separates the curds and the whey. And the curds are the solids, and the whey is the liquid part of milk.
Okay.
And
Good.
you can do it 3 or 4 different ways.
Perfect. Thank you. I figured not everyone knows about rennet. You taught me that years ago. So let's circle back to something you were talking about. I love that you said cheese was developed as a way to store protein, and you were touching on the sort of the nutrient profile and the health benefits. Can you speak a little more to health benefits of cheese in general, and then if you see any enhancements when it comes to a raw milk cheese.
Um, well, first of all, I'm going to say I'm a cheese guy, not a doctor, so it's only my opinion. Um,
Dr.
but
Hook.
yeah, cheese is stored protein. I mean, it started off as just a way to preserve a, scarce product, milk, that you couldn't drink, and that, when you preserved it via cheese, people ate it, and it sustained them through times when other food maybe wasn't available. Um, and it's for me, I've been a vegetarian for 40 years, and cheese is part of my diet. And it's just like everything else, like you shouldn't eat a whole lot of it. I mean, but honestly, like for me personally, my problem isn't with cheese or with dairy fats and stuff. Carb or bread is like not my friend. I cut down on bread, and sure, I, try to eat smart. I don't eat a whole chocolate cake in a night or whatever, but cheese is like great cheese is satiating. You don't eat an enormous amount of it. Uh, you don't, it's not like something like that. I mean, it drives you to want it, to desire because it tastes great. But at the same time, you're not like, oh, I'm going to eat a whole pint of like fresh mozzarella like it's a pint of Ben and Jerry's.
No, I
Uh,
never, as a anorexic bulimic, I will say that I would binge on things like ice cream and fat-free cake. I never went into the fridge and looked at a thing of, well, we didn't grow up with a ton of great cheese, cheddar. I never ate a block of cheddar. I just didn't.
yeah, I mean, so I think that cheese is good for you, and especially great cheese, because, people talk about like all natural, and I mean, cheese at its core is all that. There are like, you know, all sorts of processed foods with tons of additives, and sure, there's a lot of that in the cheese world. But at Capella, we don't sell flavor added cheeses. I only have two smoked cheese. One of them is an organic smoked blue cheese, and one of them is smoked provolone from Italy that has been hand shaped into little pigs. And it's kind of cute and tasty. But yeah, we don't do blueberry blue cheese, and you just don't know what people are using in them. You don't know where stuff comes from. And I'm not saying that all of those are bad. I'm just saying that without them, I can stand behind and say this cheese is made with four ingredients or
Right.
five.
And that's a huge problem in our food supplies. Many, many, many ingredients, a lot of them unpronounceable, unknown, unstudied. So anything special about raw milk cheeses, or is that more of like a production
What
decision?
I think that there used to be a lot, or there was a difference in raw milk cheeses and cheeses made with pasteurized milk. Uh, I mean, some of the difference though, or let maybe talk about pasteurization. You can either do it at high temperature for a short amount of time or a little lower temperature for a long amount of time. And you're trying to kill pathogens in the milk.
Mhm.
And raw milk cheeses will do what's called self-pasteurization after roughly 60 days. The good pathogens will overwhelm the bad pathogens. But that's in America, we can't get young, fresh cheeses that are less than 60 days old that are raw milk. Um, and there used to be like you could really taste the difference. But I have to say, cheese makers who use pasteurized milk nowadays revert back to being scientists, have access to many more cultures and they can identify like what the cultures that pasteurization kills, they can add them back. They can help engineer the flavor. And the cultures they add are all natural. I mean, yeah, they come from a lab, but it's nothing that you wouldn't eat. And so they've found ways to make safe cheese taste like and safe by government standards because lots of people all over the world still eat raw milk cheese. And when I am in Europe or I have access to it, I'll eat raw milk cheeses. But you know what's really strange is that I have found so many dairy people will not drink raw milk, and they have access to some of the best
It's fresh.
milk milk sources. But they just say that the risk of raw milk far outweighs any benefits that they can get from it. And like I said, I know people who have closed herds, raise their own cows, and they won't they won't drink raw milk. They won't give it to their kids.
Wow.
Um,
I would assume that they would. You're talking to the gal who goes to this store here in my county and buys raw milk for pet consumption only and puts it in my coffee. And sometimes I let the noof have some, but I like it. I'm kind of a hippie. I feel like that's how nature made it. I'm living on the edge and I drink it in France. So, but that's interesting, right?
I get all of that, and it's a personal choice, first of all.
Exactly.
And but I've just said for me, and it's seen multiple dairy people in different parts of the country and different like perspectives, philosophies, and like they won't drink it.
Oh,
And I'm like, wow. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I feel comfortable eating raw milk cheeses. I don't drink a lot of fluid milk though.
a lot of adults don't really, right? I put it in my coffee. I'm just
Oh,
thinking than
I
one of
do
my
that.
brothers said.
I I
It's
get
terrible. Don't get high off your own supply.
I do get grass-based half and half.
There you go.
I
Yum.
think they raise the cows better if
Yeah.
they're grass. But
Happy.
so I don't know. I think that I've had exceptional cheeses that come from pasteurized milk. But it's not just in America. Europeans are pasteurizing milk more so than they used to. And, the PDOs or the name controlled, issues about certain cheeses and stuff. Some of those have relaxed them to include pasteurized or raw milk versions. And actually, some cheeses can only be made from pasteurized milk. Stilton is a famous one. And
Delicious one.
yeah, and there is a raw milk Stilton, but they can't call it Stilton. They have to call it Stitchelton, which was the original name for Stilton.
Oh, interesting. So did you say PDO? Is that sort of like an appellation?
Protective of like name
Okay,
control, denomination of origin. Yeah.
gotcha. So it is like a,
AOC.
yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're government standards
Okay.
or generally accepted standards. So, um, yeah, it's like, so there are like, cheeses made all over the world now that are pasteurized and raw milk. And in America, there's still a lot of raw milk cheeses that are made here. Um, they're made by really good cheesemakers because they feel like they can shape the outcome of the cheese from the milk sources they have versus people who want the same milk every day. So, it really comes down to me as the cheesemaker. Like, I don't really, it doesn't bother me if they use or don't use raw milk. It's what they do with it and how clean their dairy is. Because, cheese, it's like a higher probability of like post-production uh pathogen, like they're getting, dairy because cheese fat and there's sugar in the milk, and pathogens love that environment. And a lot of cheeses could be like tainted after the cheese, so it has to do with like cleanliness. And you know one of my first introductions into like real cheese plant, and I arrive like at 3 o'clock, and I told the cheesemaker, "Yeah, I'll help you." And so they would finish making, and so I helped them clean the cheese room for about an hour and a half. And thought, okay, I know how to clean stuff. Like I worked in restaurants and stuff. No, not the same. And then the next morning, it was like, okay, get ready. We're gonna make cheese today, and we cleaned for the first hour. The same things that we had just cleaned the night before that no one used. And all he said was, Raymond, I can't afford to kill anybody.
Well said, man.
I'm like,
Working
I
slow,
get it. And he goes, this helps me, sleep better. And I'm like, I need cheesemakers who sleep better.
right? I love it. That's
Yeah.
so.
And so, yeah, I don't know if there's a difference really with pasteurized and raw milk. I really think it comes down to the cheesemakers and the facility, and you know, like the people who've had issues like in the last like 10 years or so, they were just bad cheesemakers. They didn't care that their dairies were dirty or not clean. They didn't care where they were getting milk and who was the actual producer. So once again, it's not the problem wasn't with their cheese, it was with the cheesemaker.
We talk about that a lot on the nourishment mindset. Ideally, know your farmer.
Yes. Same
Same.
thing. Know your cheesemaker, know your cheesemonger. You
Exactly.
know, yeah, I was doing a class with a cheesemaker one time at my shop, and he said something to me that I didn't realize it, but it made me feel really good. And he was like, asked if I'd been to his dairy, and he's like, yeah, a few times. And he's helped make cheese, and he's being very generous because I was in the same room cheese was being made. I don't know if I call that making cheese.
Well,
And
your
then he looked,
jovial spirit, right?
right. And
Fine.
then he looked over at the cheese case and he said, and I know for a matter of fact, he's been to most of these. And I was like, wow, true, I have. And he was like, that's who you want to buy cheese from. And I was just like, well, thank you. I'm like, I owe him $5.
Well, let's
But
talk about your business, right? We've talked generally about cheese and your foodie experiences, and I love the way to store protein, and then this concept of self-pasteurization. I'm always learning from you, but let's get down to business. Capella, tell us about.
Capella is a specialty cheese shop in Atlanta, Georgia. We ship nationwide. We really specialize in the best cheeses. We like to tell people that there are cheeses that have the same name, but they're not the same cheese.
Mm,
I mean, perfect example, a woman came in and with a group of three people buying cheese for dinner, and they were buying, and she was like, "Oh, I have," because the cheesemonger suggested Manchego would be a good one for their assortment. And she said, "Oh, I have Manchego at home. I got it from fill in the blank." And I just said, well, that's great, but how about you just try mine? Because I have a lot of belief that my Manchego is the best Manchego there is. And she said no, but the other people said yes. So I gave them a taste. And they were like, oh my God, this is incredible. And finally, she was like, yeah, I'll try it. And I didn't ask her anymore, but then she turned around and said, "Okay, yeah, I'll take a half a pound." I mean, so there are like we get the best of the best, the truest one. Like our Manchego is only made from the milk of the black sheep of La Mancha, the breed uh, sheep that Manchego was meant to be made from. And it's organic, made on a biodynamic farm, and it's only made by women because the family that owns it believe that only women's hands are gentle enough when the cheese is young. And like that is, and that's just how they did it for 3 generations. It's like history and respect. And, it's like how do you have an organic biodynamic farm in the rustic central Spain in the land of Don Quixote? And it's because these people are passionate and they care about it. And, every cheese that we have has a great story. I talked earlier about having a smoked blue cheese. I
Mhm.
mean, it's from an organic farm people who have their own animals and they smoke the cheese over organic hazelnut shells, which are also from Southern Oregon
Hmm.
where the cheese is made. And like when it all like you hear everything, and it's like, okay, that all falls together. That makes sense. That's the way it should be. That's the kind of cheeses we look for. We have a lot of farmstead cheeses where people raise the animals they make their cheese from because they're raising the animals to produce the highest quality of milk, not the highest quantity. And so they make the best cheeses that way. But we also make every day, we make fresh mozzarella, burrata, and bocconcini in our store.
You make
Uh, yeah, we have a special facility. We have cheese rooms to store cheeses. We don't age cheeses or affect them like some cheese shops do, but we buy cheeses in the best condition and we hold them in ideal conditions because we don't buy cut wheels of any cheese. We only buy solid whole wheels because anytime you buy a cut wheel of cheese, when you cut it and you crack it open, you expose the interior to air and it starts to degrade. And then most of that cheese is back, put in petrochemical byproducts and sucked all the air out of it. And so the initial layers of the cheese all taste like plastic. We don't do that. We have rooms that are as cave-like as you can get. There are no fans in our cheese rooms. They have special gravity coil units. There is an individual humidity system for each of my 3 cheese rooms. It keeps them humidity from 85, 90, and above 95%. We have an ante room. You can't walk directly into my cheese rooms. We have an ante room. You walk in, it has the same cooling and humidity controls. Shut the door behind you before you open the door to the cheese room. Because every time you open a door and close it to a room like that, you exchange 28 to 32% of the environment in it.
wow.
And that is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain consistent environment. So when we open and close those doors, we're only exchanging a minimal amount and it's of likeness. It even has special lights in it that don't generate heat. I mean, LED, but they have to be a certain color. And we have a special controller that uh, it tests the temperature and the humidity 15 times a minute and
Oh,
makes micro adjustments. And we don't buy cheese from local distributors. We buy direct from all local or domestic producers and have them ship cheese to us. And we order from the Europeans and South Africans, and we pre-order our cheese from them, and then we fly it in. We
oh,
get our cheeses in the best of the best conditions.
international cheese flights. Wow.
Yeah.
Even Europe, okay, you're there in Atlanta, but South Africa, that's a haul. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like I said, no cheese distributors or people who sell cheese have the same type of facilities we have. You go to theirs, they have big rooms with big old fans. And, like your refrigerator at home, it runs at about 38 degrees, but it has a dehumidifier in it. It is sucking moisture out of your refrigerator so that it stays frost free. Well, that moisture at these large refrigerated, they're sucking moisture out of the cheese. You put cheese in that environment, it immediately starts to degrade. You put it in our cheese rooms, the cheese just sits there and is happy. You know, we are very fortunate
Wow.
about
I love,
about.
we've heard happy cows, but these are happy cheeses.
Oh, we got those. We get a lot of allocated cheeses. And Rogue River Blue, the first American cheese to ever win the Best of Show at the World Cheese Awards, is an incredibly highly allocated cheese. Uh, Most cheese shops don't even get a wheel. Uh, most specialty grocery stores may get 1 to 5 wheels a year. We get an allocation of 48 to 50 wheels a year.
Wow.
And, so we have the cheese year round. And by keeping it in our cheese room, we have a room for blue cheese and washed rind cheeses. It is just as comfortable as it is the cave at Rogue River that they keep it in. So, you know, and the Rush Creek Reserve from Wisconsin, from Upland's Cheese, we got 350 of them this year, which is an enormous amount. And it's because the cheesemakers have faith in that our customers will buy the cheese, but also we know how to handle it and we have ideal rooms for it. And every cheesemaker who's came and has saw our facility has said that they want us to sell their cheese. And that's like one of our goals is to create a cheese shop where the finest cheesemakers in the world would want their cheeses sold at. That
Oh,
was our primary goal.
I absolutely love it. And it really underscores the artisans that you work for and the artisan that you are in preserving their cheese art, right?
Um, yeah, I mean it's not easy and it's difficult, but it's worth it though. It's worth like I I have to order cheese 6, 7, 8 weeks out and hope that I get it, that I get enough of it that I don't run out, but I don't get too much of it that it starts to deteriorate. So yeah, it's complex, but it's how you get the best cheeses in the world to your customers. I mean, we have three guiding principles. We want to supply the finest cheeses to our customers. We have to educate ourselves so we can educate our customers about what makes these cheeses great. And then we just want to engage the community of our cheese shop, which is, connecting our cheesemakers with our customers, with our wholesale customer. We sell to restaurants and other shops, and just to create this knowledge base with them and having people being passionate and knowing about what makes our cheeses great. And the cheeses that, we have some very special restaurants who buy cheese from us, and, they're serving them alongside the, Michelin quality food. And it's amazing. And it's like humbling, and yet it excites me at the same time to see people do that.
Well, it excites me to see you in your cheese palace with
Yeah.
happy cheeses made from happy animals. It's wonderful. And the other thing that we've touched on, but that your description of the storage and the care and why you would buy a full wheel, I was thinking, gosh, that's like me buying an open bottle of wine. I never did that as a sommelier. You wouldn't do that with
Yeah.
a wine. Why would you do it with the cheese? But you're underscoring that cheese is alive. And this is
Oh,
the reasons it's so good for our health. It's an alive food.
very much so. It is very, very alive and it's constantly changing. I mean, I had a guy come in and he tasted this beautiful sheep milk Gouda I have, and he said, "Oh, well, it's different. I tasted it like 3 months ago." And I'm like, food that the sheep are eating is different. Where the facility they aged them. The transportation here is different. The one that 3 months ago probably got shipped over when in warmer temperatures than the ones I just got, which came in the cold. And he was just standing there and he's like, "Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it." And I'm like, and you have to be cognizant of all of that to know that my sheep milk Gouda from Amsterdam is different, but it's still great and it's great. It's quality made. And just because it's different doesn't mean it's worse or better. It's just different. And in 3 months when I get again, it'll be just like it was the first time I got it. So yeah, you gotta stay on top of it. And the best part of my job, got to eat a lot of cheese.
Right? Yes, that alive food, you got to know your product. So,
Yeah.
I do want to let folks know, you mentioned it, that you ship nationwide. I must admit, I'm an honest gal, that I have not yet been to Capella. But the reason Raymond and I got back in touch is I sent a thank you gift, and they did such a good job selecting, curating this thank you gift and getting it to them at the correct day. And the recipients were blown away. So I can personally, even though I haven't been there, recommend that this is the place to go if you have someone special that you want to celebrate or thank who loves real whole delicious alive food. So before we get to my last question that anyone who's a returning listener will know is coming, you let me know that it's okay to just ask you a question about your own health journey, because before we started the recording, you were talking about a theme that I use in my private practice, which is like incremental changes to build improved health, right? Because it can be super overwhelming to make a giant lifestyle change. So would you mind sharing some of your gems
Oh, I'm
regarding
happy to.
and
Um,
other?
I had sleep issues that I didn't fully understand, but I also had heart issues. And 12 years ago, it happened during the London Olympics. I was in a critical care unit for 10 days, and I had 31 different doctors working on me. I mean, I almost died, and a myriad of problems. Uh, my body chemistry was out of balance. And so I got all of that straightened out. I learned about my sleep issues. I use a CPAP machine and get rest. I had to have surgery inside my heart. It's like the weirdest thing in the world. And, you know, they kill you to do it. And then they shock you back to life. But all of this stuff really like made me put my health in, front and center. And I had to be my own advocate. I had to be the one who took care of me. I had to be the one to ask doctors questions. I had to also, you have to like stand up for yourself in the healthcare business. Like some doesn't seem right, some seems fishy. Say something, like raise your hand, like I used to think that, oh, okay, I got a doctor and my insurance is covering it. And like, oh, I don't really like him, but that's my, no, go find yourself another one. Go, find a doctor that you like that you get. And so I taking care of myself. In the last 18 months, I've dropped about 50 pounds. I want to lose more. I don't put unrealistic, like, oh, I have to, and I know my weight fluctuates and some days it goes up, but it's really about the goal and the intent. And I was telling Dixie earlier that like my goal every day is to get a lot of rest. I have a friend who's a doctor, and he told me when I was going through the big bulk of my medical that I would never fully get healthy without rest. And I was like, how does that affect? It affects everything. And like so much healing happens when I'm asleep, my blood sugar goes down.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's like with apnea, I was tested one time and I woke up 170 times in a night. And you don't realize it, but you just like when you wake up and you're all cranky and the first thing you do is yawn. And it's like because you're tired, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And now I wake up and it's like feeling good. And it's like, got to go feed my coffee fix first thing. But, I feel good. And part of it is like about eating good. Um, I've got much better about cooking for myself. I'm a really good cook and I have lots of experience. I have one of the best pantries that, available.
Don't
I
doubt it.
I got everything. I've got I've got everything. And I like cooking. So I cook for, myself and people but also I go shop and like getting like fresh food and you know, like I say challenge, but like when I go to the grocery store, I'm always buying a different vegetable because like I can be lazy. I can buy the same 12 things and make 50 dishes from it, but every now and then I need to eat some broccoli rabe or I need to get a bundle of asparagus and just like keep changing things up and eating a lot of color. I really make that a point to put a lot of color into my food. I feel like it's healthy for me.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome to check in with you at times and kind of hear about how you've made these changes and improved your health. Because that's, it's the difference between dragging through a day and like enjoying everything that you've worked so hard to build, right?
Yeah, oh, it's like, yeah, I need rest and I need good nourishment. I need, a good like atmosphere in my home. I need, everything because I love my job and I love my cheese shop, but it takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus. And, I owe it to all of my coworkers, my business partner, the people I represent, and the people I sell to be on top of my game to sell them and supply them the best products in the world.
Well,
And so, you know, I'm responsible for that. So it takes energy.
it's inspiring and it's not easy, but it's simple. You're saying good ingredients, paying attention, sleep, which we don't tend to value in our culture, but it is critical. And what your doctor friend said, that's how you're going to heal. You heal when you're asleep. So,
Uh,
bravo.
it's big for me.
Very well. So, last question. I always end the pod with this question. It's a tableside tradition, favorite tableside tradition. So in my house, it's very simple. It's just the evening cheers. It might be water, might be wine, whatever it is, just that moment where you say, okay, cheers, we're sitting down. We're going to appreciate this time. Even if we're rushing off to baseball, might be a 10-minute meal.
Oh, it's probably for me, it's probably something very, very similar. I mean, it doesn't have to be a cheers as much as or anything. It's just an acknowledgement that you took a moment for yourself or to share with your friends or your family or people you care about, and that, you took the time to make that happen, and they took the time. Um, it's so easy like to be constantly rushing around and not taking a moment to be present and to like, I try to every day, and I make a point of it, is to find a moment of peace and a moment of beauty every day in my life. And sometimes it's the same thing. I see butterflies and bees and birds and beautiful flowers and or just really nice people. And like I get to talk to someone who makes me happy for a minute. I take it. I need that. I need that minute.
Yeah.
And because there's other times I'm taking out the trash or washing the dishes, and you got to do all that too. So I really try to find that, and I've been blessed that I can find that every day.
Well, and it's wonderful that you're looking for it, right?
I think
You
that's
got to
the
stop
big
and
part
look
of
for
it.
it. Well, Raymond Hook, thank you, y'all. Capella cheese. It will be in the show notes. There will be a link. If you're not a subscriber, you want to get that because there's going to be some good stuff in there that's only for subscribers. That's favorfat.substack.com. We appreciate you being on the show. We wish you
I'm very happy. Thank you.
bounty and happy cheese. And until next time, friend.
Thank you, Dixie.
Well, there you have it, y'all. Head on over to capellacheese.com and get 10% off by using the shop code Dixie10.